So our what we're going to talk about now is orbs. Orbs are, the whole concept is it's a hollow form. However, you want to think big. The reason that it needs to be hollowed out is because it's thicker than our allowance of firing depth, which is your pinky finger, no thicker than the width of your pinky finger. Quite honestly, for this project, for thickness wise, the larger you go, you're gonna need a thicker wall to maintain the stability as it's hollow. So you can go all the way up to the thickness of your thumb just for this one project. But again, hollow, because I need that inside space to be open in order for it to be no thicker than my thumb. Let's talk about your theme options. So for an orb, you can do an animal bank. You can recreate a planet or create your own planet. You can make something from like up in the sky. So hot air balloons, airplanes, clouds, things of that nature. Recreation, so that's your sports balls. Basketballs, volleyballs, beach balls, kettlebells, sports equipment would be appropriate. You can do something from underground or food. I personally am always a fan favorite of like a traditional animal bank. So that's kind of what we're gonna talk about today. Get your clay, pick your theme, do your sketches, find your videos. You're going to consult with me about it, and then you can get your clay. When you do get your clay, I would say double that. So this is a full handful, probably about the size of a softball. I would double that. And then wedge your clay. Keep in mind you are gonna hollow this, and working with a large amount of clay is more difficult to wedge, so just be patient with yourself. Throw in a couple extra wedges, maybe double your normal number, but nonetheless, do your best. Palms on the outside, push with the heel of your hand, rotate backwards so you're always wedging a different piece. I'm watching the surface, waiting to see the moment when bubbles stop appearing or popping. All right, okay. So probably planning wise, the most important thing to consider is how are you going to construct it? So if it's, let's say I'm gonna make an animal bank and it's gonna be an elephant. I can choose to either just do the head of an elephant, hollow this out, add some ears, eyes, trunk, okay? Or maybe I wanna do the entire elephant. So he has a head, maybe his body's more oval. I might make him sitting, so he might have little stumpy legs here and his head up this way. Maybe he's walking, so he's maybe more this direction. Am I going to hollow these separately and then slip and score them together? If that's the case, a few things. Remember, each one needs their own individual hole when they're done, but also do these interior spaces need to be connected. If I'm gonna make it into a money bank, I probably want the most interior space I can get. So I might hollow this out, and then before I attach them, cut a hole in each where they're gonna align so that those inside interior holes are connected, okay? Option number 2 would be to freeform it, meaning I can make all these separate parts and I can attach them together, right, by slipping and scoring. Beforehand, smoothing that neck connection together. So I'm sculpting it, but then later I'm still gonna cut it in half and hollow it out. The beauty of this is you have a little bit more control over building it, shape-wise, and then cut it and hollow it, okay? Your other option is just start with one big shape and just freehand shape it. So I could take my lump of clay and kind of pinch a little head out of it and rough sculpt that way. No matter which method you choose to kind of construct it, you're always going to cut it in half as symmetrically as possible. So symmetrical, I probably am not gonna cut this guy this way because I would have trouble hollowing the head out. Rather, I'm gonna cut him this direction in half. Symmetrical means equal parts, so 2 halves that are equal, or close to. And if you want a nice clean cut, sometimes have a friend help you. Having a friend help you is always the best option. And then I just need to hollow. If you're like me, you may want a hollowing guide. So I like to just draw a rough line about 1/4 inch width all the way around my shape. I meant rough, I guess. So that I know where my hollow zone is. And then just be mindful, depth-wise, my head is shallower than the body. So be conscious of that when you're hollowing. Let the tool do the work. These loop tools are intended to remove clay. They have a little bit of a sharpened edge on them. When I go to hollow, if I just try to pull, I'm having to hold and grip onto this pretty hard. If I choose to use the tool as my manipulator instead, I don't have to hold on quite as hard, and then I'm actually letting the tool do the work for removal. So anytime I start to feel resistance and I feel like I have to grip it a little bit stronger, then I'm going to wiggle. Okay, so there is an option to kind of leave some voids in this as well. A really popular style became pumpkins, jack-o'-lanterns. Great. You put a candle in them, they're really cute decoration. However, you need to pay attention to that interior space if you're gonna have holes on the inside. So once I get this all hollowed out, if I know I'm gonna be seeing the inside somehow, at some way, shape, or form, I'm gonna take the time to smooth that down. If you're not gonna see the inside, that part doesn't really matter, but I always just give it a rough once go around with my finger, okay? Once you're hollow, you're gonna do both sides. Then you're gonna stuff the inside with newspaper. I like newspaper best because it's a little stiffer. When I crumple it, it has that pushback effect. It wants to re-expand. And you're crumpling, you're not folding. You're gonna stuff the inside until it's full, both sides, both halves, and then you're gonna slip and score it back together. So if I just stick it, not gonna stay. Score that surface. Do yourself a favor. Use a fork. Go at least 2 directions. Slip between. Re-stick them. I always kind of do a lineup check before I put them together. I kind of did that a second ago. Just making sure that I don't have to do any major manipulation to get those halves to fit back. And then, you know, the unfortunate part is I've cut it in half, so I can still see that crack. That is always going to be a moment of weakness for my clay. So I always take a little bit of clay. I have water on the table. Water to soften it up. Again, make a coil, similarly to how we do when we build with slabs and slab pots. Cover the crack with my coil, and then I just use my finger to smooth it into both parts. Again, sometimes when you're neatening, things get messy before they get neat. And then I can use my finger to smooth. I may grab a rib, which I guess I didn't grab beforehand, a rib to also help me kind of get this smoothed out and then take off any of that extra that is unnecessary. And once I have it all together, then it's just a matter of decorating and neatening. Again, you're in an advanced class, so detail is important, texture is important. Make sure that it's appropriate to what you're building. The examples I have are mostly banks, but not all. Mr. Jigglypuff. He is probably a good medium size. I would prefer him to be a little bit bigger. He is a money bank. That money slot needs to be a little bit longer. And then, if you do want to make a bank, you can purchase your own plug. You can get that at Menards or Runnings or any, I think Hardware Hank probably has some too. You can get a cork, you can get a rubber gasket or rubber plug, and I will help you fit those when that time comes. I have a whale also in a bank. Again, money slot, not big enough, not functional. A jack-o'-lantern, so this is the instance where you'd want to put a candle underneath, cut a hole for that later. Do you see the inside? Is it painted? And then, he's all painted white or orange. I think a little variation in that orange could have helped the argument a little bit more. Something like this would be an instance where you would have to make that decision. Is this all built as one solid? Do I try to free sculpt it and make that mushroom shape? Squeeze this, flatten this, pinch this out. Am I trying to freeform it? Do I want the top made separate from the bottom? Are they connected permanently, or are they made separately and attached after? And then again, the last thing that you need to do is poke holes. So you can see that there's a pinhole here. There is also a hole on this part, which means this is two separate sections. This one just so happens to be built by design that there is already a candle hole, so no need to make sure you're poking extras. And then in the bank's kind of a self-made system, the money slot becomes your air hole. So that is orbs.